for really, really concentrated, powerful ideas and innovation. Every song has got something that was being done for the first time by anybody.
The great artists of the day were just constantly watching each other, leapfrogging each other, being far more inspired by one another than jealous of one another. It was a tremendously creative atmosphere, real creativity.
I can't express myself in a conversation. I can't explain myself like this or that sometimes because this doesn't come out like that. So when we're on stage, it's all in the world. That's your whole life.
I want to clear something with you. I heard you use the expression an electric church as an ambition you had. Was this speaking metaphorically or poetically, or do you really want to...
Well, let's see, I don't know. It's just a belief that I have, And we do use electric guitars. Everything, is electrified nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
So therefore the belief comes into, through electricity to the people, whatever. That's why we play so loud, because it doesn't actually hit through the eardrums like most groups do nowadays. They say, well, we're going to play loud too because they're playing loud. And they got this real shrill sound, and it's really hard. We're playing for our sound to go inside the soul of the person, actually.
It's just my personal opinion, between 67 and 68 are the real peaks. There was a lot of good stuff still to come, of course. But that period was like overwhelming with the quality.
Loads of tricks, loads of jokes, an enormous amount of feeling and aggression.
Kiss this guy. All around. Don't know if I'm coming down.
Purple Haze is the song that is going to grab your attention straight away. It was a huge hit in the UK.
Purple Haze is a quite astonishing track for sure. So it was a wonderful single, and then it was a wonderful start to that album. And then within that, there's the fantastic intro of Purple Haze. So the first sound you hear of smash hits is da, 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 which I'm given to understand is the Devil's Interval.
If he'd have tried that on, as it were, as a musician for the papacy, for the Holy Office in 1600, he would have been excommunicated and burnt at the stake because that was a banned interval. It was considered, as it were, literally, I believe, sacred to the devil, that particular musical interval. And when you hear it, you can tell what the Holy Office, the Inquisition meant by that. It is very, very sinister indeed.
He actually starts in a different key, so he modulates from the key of B flat into E. straight away. So the song actually starts in B flat, which is there, and then goes to virtually straight away, which is really unusual. Certainly for the time, it's extremely unusual. And it showed you the breadth and depth of Hendrix's musical ideas. Incredible. So it starts, everybody will remember this, starts with this riff first of all.
The thrust of the song itself isn't sinister. It's all about what Jimi Hendrix was all about, the idea of alternative realities. That behind, as it were, the kind of the bricks and mortar, everyday reality of what we perceive is something else, is a vision. Loads of artists have had visions. In 1967, when he recorded that song, is that having a vision was absolutely the #1 thing that cutting-edge rock and roll musicians did. You know, it was the year not just of Jimi Hendrix, but of Sgt. Pepper and the Doors and many others. And he was absolutely bang on the game.
Whatever it is, that girl put a spell on me.
I think Hendrix has quite a particular way of writing. He is a very good lyric writer in at least in a number of songs. He does write very striking lyrics. And that song, which allegedly is pared down from a huge screed of spontaneous ruminations, sort of automatic writing kind of thing, which he did, I'm given to understand, in a dressing room in Ilford. Inspiring place, obviously. So there's this great screed, and then it's all pared down to these few images, which he said was from a dream he had about walking along the bottom of the sea. And so there's this dreaminess, but it's not a comforting dream at all. And it can't be a comforting dream because of the noise of the guitar. The noise of the guitar puts you right on edge, because, you know, that's why the Inquisition called it the devil's tritone, is because that noise, it goes straight to the alarm centers in your brain. It just does.
Tomorrow or just the end of time.
And suddenly you get this massive question asked. Is it tomorrow, or is it the end of time? What? Well, I can remember. It made me think. It still makes me think.
When he came to England, he saw all these guitarists who were stars, like Townsend, Clapton, Beck, Page, Green. He knew that he could blow them all off stage. You know, he was just so much better than they were. And so there was this real element of scene stealer, of showstopper about his guitar playing. Every solo is a classic. You know, there is no fat on a Jimi Hendrix solo, even where he goes into, as it were, complete freakouts or rave ups or anything. You never feel it goes on for a second too long. You know, every lick he leaves you wanting more every time.
Fire, I do think, is a strong song, and it's also one of his more often covered songs, I think, which might indicate, I guess, it's a little easier to do than some other things he does. But I do like the rush of it. That's the thing. It's one of those songs where Mitch Mitchell, the drummer, contributes a lot to the feeling of it, and you get the feeling of both of them, and Noel, who is kind of, he's right there, but he's the least showy member of the Experience. There is this obsessive rush about it.
Hendrix used to play this right through his career. It was obviously a track he really loved, and it worked really well live. I think he was playing it right up to the end of his career, his live career. And what's interesting about this particular song is Hendrix, because he had an influence of blues and jazz in his playing as well, he uses octaves quite a lot, and this is something that he used throughout his playing. Obviously, in a three-piece as well, that's probably one of the reasons that you would do it, because it gets a fatter sound. And basically what you're doing is you're just creating two notes instead of one to play a melody. So in this particular case, and it's the sort of sound that you would hear more from a jazz player, but obviously he turned up the guitar so it was distorted.
You say your mama ain't home and ain't my concern. Just to play with me and you won't get burned. Only one itch in the side. Let me stand next to you.
The actual origin of the song is very typical of Jimi Hendrix, and indeed a lot of rock and roll writing at that time. It started off with just a stray comment in an everyday situation which was nothing to do with rock and roll. Christmas 1966, Jimi Hendrix was poor. First single hadn't been released yet. He was living in as it were, in other people's flats. He borrowed Ringo Starr's flat. He was being heavily subsidized by his manager, living with his girlfriend Kathy Etchingham. They were invited for Christmas to Folkestone by bass player Noel Redding's mum, Margaret. Christmas in London, and indeed in England, used to be a lot colder than it is now. And they had the old electric fire on. Jimmy got on very well with people's mums, and he joked to Margaret Redding, "Excuse me, can I get closer to the fire?" Because her dog, a German Shepherd, was actually slumped in front of it, stopping anybody getting closer to the fire. And Jimmy hadn't come, as it were, dressed for cold weather. He'd brought very few clothes with him when he came from America. And when he came from America, it was summer in New York. He'd bought very little since he came to the UK because he had so little money, so he was very thinly dressed for, as it were, a British Christmas. Hence he was cold, hence he wanted to get near the fire, hence move over Rover, let Jimmy take over. That gag in the song was just, he was quoting himself, asking if he could shift the dog over.
After all the jacks are in the boxes, and the clowns have all gone to bed, you can hear happiness staggering on down the street. Footprints dressed in red. The wind whispers, hear it. A broom is drearily sweeping.
The Wind Cries Mary, well, it's obviously a very moody affair, slow and draggy, bluesy kind of feeling to it, and it's a slow, very powerful movement, one of those sort of most tidal feelings that Hendrix can create.
I remember when I first heard this, I was just knocked out by the sensitivity of a song like this. It was a beautiful song. The first thing you notice in this song, he's singing it in a key that was slightly alien to most rock and roll songs. He starts basically in the key of E flat and slides up to an F, but underneath the E flat, a fourth below it, he's got a B flat, and then he's got a C, which is like having a bass player playing beneath it as well. So he creates a fatter chordal sound.
The traffic lights say turn a blue tomorrow. Shine the emptiness down on my bed. The tiny island sags downstream. 'Cause the life we live is dead. The wind screams, hear it. Will the wind ever remember?
He recorded it in 20 minutes at the end of a session. They had 20 minutes left on the clock, and producer and manager Chas Chandler said, "You got anything else?" You know, rather than just going off down the pub and letting those 20 minutes go, you know, go for nothing. And he said, "Yeah, I've got a song which I wrote the other day after a huge row with his girlfriend Kathy Etchingham." Jimi Hendrix never really got on with British food. You know, he liked soul food. He was used to the food in New York City, in Greenwich Village, which of course, you know, had everything. His girlfriend Kathy Etchingham had, before meeting Hendrix, had worked in the Golden Egg, Leicester Square, which was a kind of feeble imitation of an American hamburger bar. She was a rotten cook. Jimmy complained. Kathy, who is a really feisty lady, she went absolutely nuts, crockery everywhere, the whole place was a mess, leaving Jimmy there surveying the wreckage. And by then it was late, because they always ate late, and the BBC television, which was on, had closed down, leaving the test card with a little girl in the jack-in-a-box. All of these little details are in the song. They patched it up, but it's, you know, it's a song about a breakup. Who's Mary? Catherine Mary Etchingham. It was her middle name.
I think was the first thing he recorded, probably about October '66. And of course, for most of us, apart from certain muso cognoscenti who went around the London clubs and saw him, most of us, of course, hadn't heard him until Hey Joe. Hey
Joe, written by a guy called Billy Roberts, a real mystery man, not known to have really written anything else. There are elements there of other folk songs from the 1950s, but it is a great story with great chords, and it had been picked up by, amongst others, a New York folk musician called Tim Rose, and he made an arrangement which slowed it down and made it quite heavy. Other people had hits with it, like The Leaves and Love, much kind of faster. Hey Joe, wait da 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 da, which, you know, is quite kind of rave up and of its era. But Tim Rose really reimagined it because he simply listened to the lyric. The lyric is heavy. It's about somebody who's killed his old lady. You don't treat that as kind of like a fast pop song. You know, it's something which is there to kind of rather depress the spirits. That's the way he did it. That's the version Jimi Hendrix heard, and that's a song which was in his set when he played a place called Café War in Greenwich Village in 1966, that summer. Now, that same song and that same version by Tim Rose was also a huge favourite of Chas Chandler. Chas Chandler had just left the Animals. He's looking for somebody to manage. He'd been recommended to go to see this guy, Jimi Hendrix, playing at the Café War, and when he was actually doing this song, it was serendipity. Here's a guy doing this great song the way I think it should be done. That was the one thing which persuaded Chas Chandler to go up to Jimi Hendrix and said, "Come to Britain, I'm going to make you a star."
I'm going on a shoot my old lady. You know, I'm gonna mess around with another man. I'm going on a shoot my old lady.
this was the first track I ever saw Hendrix perform on Top of the Pops. I can remember going to school the next day and all the kids at school saying, "Did you see that guy?" You know, not only was he a black man singing rock, but he was playing guitar upside down and left-handed. Pretty wonderful experience. And for me as well, because I'd already been playing a lot of blues guitar, or trying to play blues guitar, it was an affirmation of what I'd been trying to do. He was doing it. And I didn't realize there's somebody out there doing that sort of thing already. So he was streets ahead of me, you know. But it was great because it meant it gave me a goal to try and reach.
Everything about that record is perfect. Is always a wrong thing to say about art, but it's extremely potent. At least the opening guitar chords grab you. The different sound. We'd never heard Hendrix before, and he does make a different sound. This isn't extreme Hendrix guitar. It's more orthodox than a lot of the things he did immediately afterwards, including Purple Haze, the second single. But it is a powerful guitar line, it does grab you, and then after that it's the power of the song and Hendrix's performance. Now, as we know, Hendrix really doubted his ability as a vocalist, and he was just starting to get some faith in himself, partly through Bob Dylan, hearing that someone didn't have to have a beautiful soul voice like, say, Sam Cooke, in order to be a vocalist. So he did step forward, and here he has a really difficult vocal because there's two characters involved. And the whole dynamic of the song works on there being a dialogue here. That is what makes the song dynamic. That's why he liked it when he heard Tim Rose do it. And he makes that work very well, I think. It's not like he does a funny voice to characterize the Inquisitor or Joe, but nonetheless, he does get that across. "Hey Joe, where you going with that gun in your hand?" "Oh, I'm just going to kill my old lady." "What? Hey, is that not a fantastically dramatic start to a song?" "Oh yes," and then we follow through the story, and the story is beautifully constructed, and Hendrix tells the story very well. It's a great narrative performance, which again is quite unusual in what he does. And then, so we get the drama. "Hey, I shot my lady." He shouts that line out, you know, "I shot my woman." And then we work through to, he's off down to Mexico way, and they're not going to hang me, and all that kind of thing. I mean, it's a wonderful drama. His skill, in one sense, was finding the song, seeing he could do it, and then it's a great vehicle for an early Hendrix vocal, with Hendrix finding, maybe with that track, I don't know that for sure, but around the time of that track, that he really could sing in an effective way.
When they were cutting Hey Joe, Jimi Hendrix had actually not written anything. And Chas Chandler knew that the money was in publishing. is that he had to write something, because the point about B-sides, that a record was not going to be judged on its B-side. Nobody played the B-side, but yet it would have royalties every time that the record was actually bought. So Jimi Hendrix, just for the point of revenue, had to write something.
Every day in the week, I've been sick. If I stay too long, the people try to pull me down. They talk about the dog, talk about the clothes I wear, but they don't realize they're the ones who swear. Hey! You can't hold me down. I don't want to be tied down. I gotta move on. I said, stone free, do what I stone free, do right to stone free. I can't stay. Got to get away.
Stone free, I think, is Hendrix saying, this is who I am, obviously in the sort of self-mythologizing way that more or less anybody does when they write a declamatory kind of autobiographical song like that. But it's got a great rush to it, a great power to it and spirit. And he's stone free to do what I want, and we kind of want him to do what he wants to do, at least musically, and we're right out there with him, so it feels very celebratory and all-round ace, I'd say.
He was basically talking about people looking at him because he was dressed funny and looked different, but he was saying that those people, like the city people in the suits and all that sort of stuff, were the ones that were square, and he was free.
The Smash Hits has got a different track listing in the UK and the US. That's because they were released a year apart. They were released for the same reason in each territory, which is the record company knew that the next new album was going to be some months away. The reason that All Along the Watchtower wasn't on the UK album in April 1968 was it hadn't been recorded yet, but it had been recorded by the time in July 1969 that the US release came out. It is without doubt one of, if not the greatest ever cover version in rock history. So much so that the original artist, Bob Dylan, immediately started playing his song live the way that Jimi Hendrix had arranged it, and stuck with that ever since, which I think, shows that Bob Dylan recognized that that Jimi Hendrix's judgment was absolutely spot on throughout.
I think that's his relationship with Dylan, is being inspired. That fundamental thing of being inspired to sing by the fact that this bloke with a bloody weird voice was a great success, and thinking, well, if he's a great success singing weirdly, I sing pretty weirdly, maybe I can do it too, and getting his confidence. So that was Dylan's, probably his greatest contribution to Hendrix, was giving him his confidence to sing.
The original version by Bob Dylan, which is a kind of quiet, underkey, understated, sinister song, is really creepy and really effective. But but Jimi Hendrix kind of brings out the full force of what is actually a very apocalyptic, disorientating tale, not least because if you actually look at the lyrics, it's a story told backwards. And because a story is told backwards, there's that sense of dislocation. You don't know quite what's going on, but it's rather eerie. Also, the biblical language suggests that something very old and very cosmic and very judgmental is going on. This is something that Jimi Hendrix locked into straight away because, of course, he came from a background where, of church and so forth, like Bob Dylan's himself, and also he's a huge fan of Bob Dylan. He heard the record being played around about Christmas 1967 when it came out at a party and said straight away to Dave Mason, his friend, who played with the band Traffic, "I've got to cover that."
Was a massive hit, and it's probably, along with Foxy Lady and Purple Haze, the most remembered track by Hendrix. Young and old know this track, And of course on it has sort of guitar solos one after the other, and the ingredients are first of all standard Hendrix, really good melodic guitar playing, and he uses octaves like I was talking about earlier again, and then he plays a rhythm part. So he's got, nearly all the sort of styles that he would use, apart from maybe some of the dive bomb things that he did at Woodstock and the sort of sound effects. But from a straight guitar playing point of view, it's a superb collection of solos. There's two basic solos, and there's a long 3-part solo, and then a rhythm part solo, and then a solo out in the end. The track is only about 3.5 minutes long, but it doesn't seem like it. You want to hear more. And it's definitely a tour de force by Hendrix.
It's a fantastic tribute to Dylan's songwriting. You can do this completely differently, and it still works. He's just put in some extraordinary guitar playing, which develops the mood and makes the guitar playing is obviously why Dylan thought it was even better than his, so to speak, because of all the emotional atmosphere which is chiefly menace, and it's clearly connects with our feelings at the time about the Vietnam War, but there's always a war going on, so doesn't it work in connection with the Iraq War? Those soaring, swerving sounds he makes on the guitar, like it. So that's rockets going up or something, but you feel that menace and violence, and as in the original, but drawn from the original, but then multiplied all along the watchtower, the threat of observation. Observation, we're not observed, are we? We're the most CCTV'd nation in the whole world at the moment, so does that survive? Damn right, it lives right now, It's just a colossal emotional experience and completely eternal. The song's durable, the performance of it is can never fade away. That can never fail to touch people.
We end line-up not with a psychedelic experience, but it is at least the sort of music associated with such happenings. The Jimi Hendrix Experience with Manic Depression.
searching my soul. I know what I want, but I just don't know.
Manic Depression, like fire, just started off with a stray joke. It was during a press conference, and sitting in on the press conference was Jimmy's manager, Chaz Chandler, who also had been a star in his own right with the Animals. And Chaz just jested that Jimmy was a manic depressive. And Jimmy was actually quite taken by this, and actually he started writing notes for the song right there and then. It was something that sparked something in his imagination.
Manic Depression, I think, is another example of how deep he'll go lyrically. I mean, very often he'll the guitar is where the depth of a Hendrix track lies, and then you get the odd glimpse of depth in the lyrics. But this is a really dark, utterly serious song. At one point, it says he feels like he's going down. And of course, well, even then, the reference must have been, well, to death, basically, the possibility of death. And of course, because he did die a couple of years later, that possibility just resonates far more than it otherwise would have to us if he was still, you know, a wonderful old blues man now.
This is a slightly more unusual track from Hendrix because it's in the time signature of 3/4, which is basically 3 crotchets per bar. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is what we've been playing for all the other tunes. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But the drums are playing 9/8. He's playing 3/4 and the drums are playing 9/8, which is compound time. So they're going da 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 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 against his 1 2 3.
Towards the end, though, it goes into, you know, what the sort of thing that John Coltrane was doing, and this is where Mitch Mitchell, the drummer, who had a big jazz background, really comes to his own, where it just goes absolutely bonkers on cymbals, just like Elvin Jones was doing at the time with John Coltrane's Sheets of Sound.
Yeah, when you listen to the Smash Hits material, for sure, the relationship between Jimmy and Mitch is clearly a musical driving force. Now, the way it sounds to me is that on the fast numbers, Mitch is really effective. And to me, he's effective in a strange way. And I have no idea if a musician would confirm this. But the way he's effective is because he seems to me to be always chasing Jimmy. I hear him as just behind Jimmy, and it's like there's this great struggling and tremendous energy being put into chasing him. And in a creative sense, that seems a true image.
This wasn't unique to in rock music. Keith Moon was doing the same thing with The Who. Ginger Baker was doing the same thing with Cream. They were the 3 most dynamic drummers of their day. And in fact, it's hard to find any drummer, you know, as dynamic since. I think it works absolutely brilliantly. You will meet other people who say that you know, a more straightforward blues rock drummer would have worked better. Not convinced. When he played with more solid, less, if you like, exciting drummers than Mitch Mitchell, you had a rather less exciting sound, in my view. I think it was a great shame in the end that he never found anybody as good as Mitch Mitchell, or anybody who could keep up, who would keep up with him.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to go into one of those other things, do a thing dedicated to that little girl over there called Hartley. Thing called Foxy Lady. Look out. Foxy Lady.
Foxy Lady was an incredible way to start an album. That album was Are You Experienced? It's a very weird way, I think, to end an album, because it's, you know, it's like sticking your announcement last.
Foxy Lady, if you don't listen to the words, I think is a good noise to finish the album on. It's Hendrix up there and strutting and doing his thing for sure. In that sense, you know, it probably goes along with Stone Free and so on. However, this one actually does have the most dated lyrics, I guess, on the album, because, God, we just can't wear sexism like that anymore, I don't think, without feeling embarrassed. So this does feel wrong. I mean, sexiness is fine, and he expresses that in other places, but here it is kind of leering and lascivious, and not in a good way. You can do that in a good way, you know. Everybody feels horny sometimes. You can express it like that, but it's just like he's kind of sort of oily, I suppose, really, in the way he expresses himself. Foxy Lady, oh yes, please piss off. You know, it's, perhaps it worked in the '67. I don't remember it working for me, but you know, maybe it did if you were Jimi Hendrix.
Once again, you know, he comes up with a stormer of a lick, basically, and it's really simple. And also the thing is, you know, he's been through on this album about 5 or 6 different keys, which is quite unusual. This is basically in F sharp. He's been in B flat, he's been in E, he's been in D, he's been in C minor, he's been all over the show, been in A flat. Key no problem for Jimi Hendrix, you know. Pick a key, I'll sing it.
Ooh, Foxy Lady.
Smash Hits, you know, it didn't have a bespoke picture taken for its cover. You know, there were various sessions right throughout '66 and especially in 1967. Gerard Mankiewicz did loads of shots. There are better pictures. There are better pictures of Jimmy and of the experience. And if you look at the typography, bit cheesy, bit cheap. You know, this was very much a case of Track Records in England, you know, didn't want to spend an awful lot of money. You know, it is almost the first picture that they could find knocking around their files, sling it over to a graphic designer, botch. You know, you could do that with Letraset in a couple of hours. In other words, is that, you know, let's not spend an awful lot of money on this package. The job was just to get 40 minutes of great music, not to give, as it were, the public more than strict value for money required. As best of packages go, since the CD era, and especially since the remasters era, you know, you've got best ofs which are actually far more representative of his entire, as it were, recorded output, which only lasted less than 4 years. You know, he still did great things even during his difficult last 2 years. But, you know, when he was really on fire with a great little band behind him, you know, the experience, that's what you get on Smash Hits. And that captures a great moment before he started going off on a wander musically, which he never completed.
They talk about the clothes I wear, but they don't realize
terms of when Hendrix was at his peak, yeah, I think 67 for sure, but going on into 68, maybe even beyond, but I guess, again, obviously it relates to personal taste. The stuff that I love most all happened in, well, you'd have to say tail end of 66, because that's when Hey Joe was recorded, on through 67, on through 68. All of that stuff is phenomenal to me.
Dickens, baby. Woman here, woman there, try to keep me in a plastic cage.
I don't think he really declined in 1968, 9 and 70. He was trying other things, and not all of those things were working. But you look at the music he was making in that era, some of it is absolutely awesome. And if he had lived, and it was an accident that killed him, then I am sure that in the 70s he would have made a music quite as brilliant, but if not even more so, but just in a different style, a jazzier style, a more expansive, less rocky style.
Hey, Joe, I said, where you gonna run to now? Where you gonna go?
I would say the hallmarks of Hendrix more than anything else is just somebody who appeared, who was unlike anything else that had been around, and within a short period of time completely rewrote the book on rock and roll.
I'm going way down south. Way down, walking me free. Ain't no one gonna find me. Ain't no hangman. Ain't gonna put a rope around me. You better believe it, baby. Gotta go now. Hey, Joe.
Well, smash hits clearly summed up the first 18 months-ish of Hendrix's recording career, which was very dynamic, loads of great singles, and 2 hot albums, Axis, Bold of Love and Are You Experienced, in the reverse order. And to me at the time, that was the album I wanted. That is the album I bought, was Smash Hits. And I loved Hendrix's hits. Naturally, Hendrix would go off and do wilder stuff, more extended stuff, more improvisational. Of course he would, and would explore. Just to me, his singles represent his greatest songs.
You better run on.